the brain is coherent. It's directing a very clear vision of what it wants. Combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion, you have a different Wi-Fi signal. You have a different energy. And now the cool part about that is
Hello and welcome to the Pacific Channel. I'm your host, Steve Doherty, and in today's discussion, we're going to be covering a Dr. Joe Dispenza audio clip where he talks about how every person, every object, every place, every experience that you've ever had is mapped in your neocortex. It's stored in the body. The emotion is stored there. Your vibration is wherever you left it last on any subject, according to a lot of law of attraction teachers. So they sort of correspond with one another, and they support one another in the way that they discuss how it works. Every daily event you have has a neurological network in the brain, and there is an associated negative or positive feeling attached to every event, object, or thing that you think about. So when you are stressed, it's like a lightning storm and the brain fires out of control and out of order. It fires incoherently. That's the state of high beta. The brain starts firing out of order. When people are overstressed, according to Dr. Joe, they are over-focused. So you're focused too much on one thing or another. But if we pay attention to the problem, it makes the brain even more out of balance. That is why psychotherapy usually doesn't work or takes way too long to come to a resolution. Thinking about a past negative event, focusing on it only makes the brain worse, according to Dr. Joe. So overanalysis drives the brain into higher and higher brainwave states. So narrowing the focus is what the problem is. Let's listen to Dr. Joe discuss this and his solution now.
I mean, think about it. I mean, how could you want if you're whole? If you're whole, there's no need to want. There's no lack. There's no separation.
What does that mean, whole?
Well, here's how we describe it. We do a lot of studies on brain coherence and heart coherence. And let's talk about what it's not, okay? I mean, so when there's an emergency or when we're aroused by some threat or some condition in our life, or we can't predict an outcome, we can't control an outcome, we have the perception that something in our world could possibly get worse. We switch on that primitive nervous system, right? That fight or flight nervous system, and now the game is fight, run, or hide. The problem is with human beings, when we're at it, we feel like a loss of control. Our brain all of a sudden tries to control everything in our life. So every person, every object, everything, every place, every experience that you've ever had is mapped in your neocortex. So the arousal of the stress hormones drives the brain into a very high brainwave state called high beta. But then as you shift your attention from one meeting to another text to another person, to another thing, to another place you have to go, every one of those different elements has a neurological network in the brain. So like a lightning storm in the clouds, the brain starts firing out of order. It starts firing incoherently. And when the brain is incoherent, we're incoherent. And so think about when you're stressed. The most common thing that people do is they over-focus. They narrow their focus on whatever it is that's driving them to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And so then the act of paying attention to the problem is actually driving the brain further out of balance. And we've studied this. When you analyze that problem, that circumstance, that condition within the emotion that you are feeling and derived by the hormones of stress, you'll make your brain worse 100% of the time because the analysis, the over-analysis is driving it further into a higher thinking, higher beta brainwave state. So this kind of narrow focus is what causes the brain to be a house divided against itself. So we thought, well, why don't we do the opposite? Why, instead of narrowing our focus on the cause, something physical, something material, because the hormones of stress actually heighten the senses and cause us to become materialists. So matter is the issue when there's survival. It's whatever's around the corner. It's whatever's going to happen. So we said, okay, let's teach people something else. Let's teach them how to broaden their focus. And as they broaden their focus and take their attention off of everything material and everything known and focus on space, focus on nothing, the act of doing that actually starts slowing down the analytical mind. You can't analyze when you're sensing. And it starts to change the person's brainwaves into a slower brainwave pattern.
Right.
And so now as you start slowing your brainwaves from that high beta, you start slowing down, you're shifting gears, you go into a mid-range beta, then you go into a low-level beta, and then all of a sudden you get into alpha. Now, alpha, when you're in alpha, the voice in your head, the critic in your mind goes away. That voice that's talking to you stops, and the brain tends to see in images, in pictures. That's the imaginary state. That's the creative state. And in alpha, when you're out of survival, you're looking for answers. You're creative. You're looking for new ways of doing things. So when they broaden their focus, not only do they move into alpha, but all of a sudden we start seeing those different compartments of the brain that were once subdivided. All of a sudden starting to unify. Different communities of neurons that were fragmented start to synchronize.
And that's what you call coherence.
Right. So what syncs in the brain links in the brain. So when you see the front of the brain talking to the back of the brain, the right side of the brain talking to the left side of the brain, you start knowing something good is starting to happen and the person's starting to create more order. So when you see those psychic union of two hemispheres coming together, you know, the polarity, that person starts to feel incredibly whole. And coherence, when you have waves that are coherent, when they build or interfere with each other, their waves get bigger. And the higher the amplitude of the wave, the higher the energy in the brain. All of a sudden, the person starts to become very relaxed and no longer stressed in a program and kind of alert and awake. At the same time, when you're resentful or frustrated or impatient and you're sitting in traffic, the same hormones are released and your heart is actually beating like there's a tiger behind you, but you can't run, you can't fight, you can't hide, and the traffic is frustrating you even more. You're releasing more of those chemicals, so the heart starts beating against the closed system. And when that happens, the heart starts beating out of order. Now, the heart's incoherent. So when incoherent waves interfere with each other, they're out of order, they diminish energy, and the brain energy leaves the heart. And this is when we stop trusting. This is not a time to communicate. This is not a time to learn. This is not a time to be creative. And energy leaves the heart. So we discovered then when a person truly starts practicing those elevated emotions, the heart gets very orderly, very coherent as well. And now, when you start feeling the emotions of the things that you want in your life or that you would like to create in your life, ahead of the actual experience, it's impossible for you to want it. Why could you possibly want it if you feel like it's already happened? Now, here's the cool part. Maintain that modified state of being. Get so good at doing it with your eyes closed. Start practicing with your eyes open. And if you can maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, coherent heart, soon as energy reaches the heart, we've done thousands of studies on this, it's going straight to the brain. The heart starts to inform the brain that it's safe to create. At the exact same time, the heart begins to produce an external magnetic field. You've got a Wi-Fi signal now. You start feeling connected. You start feeling more whole. The brain is coherent. It's directing a very clear vision of what it wants. Combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion, you have a different Wi-Fi signal. You have a different energy. And now the cool part about that is you start to see those synchronicities, those coincidences, those opportunities start showing up in your life, and you're not going anywhere to get them. They're actually coming to you. Now let's just look at the biology of this.
Yeah.
Epigenetics says it's the environment that signals the gene. Genes don't create disease. Our response to the environment actually creates disease. Well, the end product of an experience in the environment is called an emotion. So the person who lives by the same emotion every single day, the body's so objective, it's believing it's living in the same environment, doesn't know the difference. And they keep the same genes signaled in the same way. Genes make proteins. Proteins are responsible for the structure and function of your body. The expression of proteins is the expression of life. And the person now is in the same emotional state. They're expressing the same genes, and nothing changes in our life until we change.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the person who trades resentment and frustration and anger and everything else for an elevated emotion and they can sustain that state, the body's so objective that it's believing it's living in a different environment.
Yeah.
So they're knocking on the genetic door. So the elevated emotion the person memorizes, the body is so objective it doesn't know the difference between the real life experience that's creating that emotion and the emotion that person's regulating by thought alone. Keep knocking on the genetic door. You down-regulate the gene for disease and you up-regulate the gene for health because their body's in a different emotional state and the body's believing it's living in a different environment. And we've done studies with novice meditators, and we were curious to see what kind of biological changes would take place in 1 week if you went all in, like immersed yourself in the entire week-long event.
Like people do on their 1 week
retreats.
retreats.
No, 1 week retreats. Yeah. So we draw blood and we look at about 2,882 metabolites, all exosomes, gene expression. And at the end of 7 days, the novice meditators, almost 100% of them, show substantial biological changes in their blood that suggests that they're living in a different environment. Now, here's the weird part about it. They're in a ballroom. There's nothing going on in a ballroom. I've been to thousands of ballrooms. There's nothing very exciting going on in a ballroom. They're actually making those changes inwardly. And I say to our research team, where are those chemicals coming from? Where are they coming from? The person's not taking any substance. It's coming from within us. And so the nervous system starts manufacturing a whole pharmacy of chemicals equal to the person's intention and emotional state. And it's how we think and how we feel that begins to alter.
So if thinking about your problems, if being narrowly focused causes brain incoherence, Dr. Joe thought, what if we do the opposite? Instead of focusing on our problems and physical, material things, what if we broadened our focus, take attention off of everything material, and instead focused on space, no thing, no time, nobody, etc. This is why he has people focus on space and time and energy in most of his meditations. When they do that, they slow their brainwave states down to the alpha, where you can think creatively. You're basically out of survival mode. You're looking for answers and new ways of doing things. The brain gets into coherence. So what is the answer again? It's to feel elevated emotions on purpose without a condition or a reason to have it. So these elevated emotions are feelings of gratefulness, appreciation, joy, love, peace, satisfaction. All of those really good feelings will put you into the right brainwave state, into the alpha brainwave state. And the other point is to do it consciously. Do it while you are awake. And I know we've repeated this, we've said this before, but that's the truth. And it's important enough to repeat over and over again. The other thing that you can do is you can journal. You can write 5 to 10 things that you are grateful for every single morning. That way you start off your morning right and you start off in a good vibration. You're in that place where your brain and your heart are in coherence. So you can keep a grateful journey, but another thing that you can do is you can script. You can write about how you want your life to be. A lot of law of attraction teachers advise this. And it's really kind of cool because you can write exactly the way that you want your life to be. And I think a lot of us have problems with this because we feel like we don't want to lie. But you have to realize that you're not really lying because you are a powerful creator and you can create your reality, right? So basically, whatever you write, if you just write it from a place of no resistance, then your brain and your body and your subconscious mind and your body won't know the difference. And they will actually start to work with the universe in order to create that reality. The other thing too is to not let others drag you down. He didn't really mention this in the audio clip, but it's very important to stay away from negative people and stay away from negativity. A lot of times whenever we're at the water cooler at work or things like that, or we get dragged into discussions about politics and other negative things that are happening in the world, and it can be very depressing. And it's not an easy thing to do to keep your vibration up if you're discussing these kinds of things. Dr. Joe made another interesting point, and that is when they were monitoring others and they saw that new chemicals were made in the body, he asked an important question, and that was, where did all of those chemicals come from that people were creating? They were in a ballroom, he was basically saying, and nothing exciting was going on. In other words, they were able to create those chemicals, those good chemicals for their bodies on their own. No drugs needed. They did it on their own. The point to all of this is that you too can do this work. You can purposely elevate your emotions for no good reason at all. And then you can heal yourself of any dis-ease and at the same time attract anything you want. If you like this video, please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And also, if you like, please leave a comment below, either about what you thought about this video or if you have a question. Thanks for watching and have a great day or night.